Well, this is the day that the Lord has made. And how are you doing? I flipped it up on you, didn't I? This is the day that the Lord has made, and I will rejoice and be glad in it. I will delight myself in the Lord, who will give me the desires of my heart. For every challenge that today brings, I will count it all joy. I will rejoice always. I will embrace the joy of the Lord as my strength. I will continue to give him praise. I will continue to give him honor and to give him all that he deserves. So, listen, I reserve the right to change up the introduction when I get ready. All right. How you doing? Glad to see you today. And but let's have a lot of fun today in studying the Word. But before we do that, let's prepare to give. Giving is worship, and we're grateful to offer the opportunity to give unto God. So use that QR code. Use the other options that are available there for you to give. And again, I use this disclaimer. If this broadcast, if this time does not bless you, then you do not have to give. But let me ask that if this does bless you, if it encourages you anyway, please, ma'am, please, sir, consider giving a seed today. All right, let's go right to work. And we are continuing our conversation in Romans chapter 13. Last time we were together, we dealt with verses 1 through 7. And so today we want to get into verses 8 through 10. My time is moving, and I want to make full use of my time for today. So, this is, of course, the gospel according to grown-ups. And so Romans chapter 13, verses 8 through 10, we want to talk under the canopy today of love fulfills the law. Love fulfills the law. Now, there are many definitions, of course, of love, but there is really only one that when Paul is talking here, we know Paul is the author of this particular passage and book. And again, he's writing to the citizens in Rome who were living under possibly Nero's early reign. And he writes to them to encourage them, to help them to know how to live responsibly. And that's verses 1 through 7. Responsible living says that you don't throw away laws because you don't like them or cherry pick the ones you do, or legislate laws on other people that you would not want to be subject to. But he says, I want to teach you how to live responsibly. But not only that, he wants to show us how to express love authentically. To express love in an authentic way. That's really what we want to dive into today for the next several minutes that we have together. And so let's read Romans chapter 13, verses 8 through 10. Only 2 verses, 3 verses, as a matter of fact. Owe no one anything except to love each other. For the one who loves another has fulfilled the law. The one for the commandments, you shall not commit adultery, you shall not murder, verse 9, Romans chapter 13, you shall not steal, you shall not covet, and any other commandment are summed up in this word. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. Love does no wrong to a neighbor. Therefore, love is the fulfilling of the law. My. Love is the fulfilling of the law. So, the salient point here that I want to begin our conversation with in Romans chapter 13, verses 8 through 10 is this. Love is the ethical heartbeat of Christian obedience. Wow. Now, there's a whole lot of words in there that we could dissect, but Love is the ethical heartbeat of Christian obedience. When we obey God and His Word, it is not out of the fear of discipline, but more so that we delight God when we obey Him. And when Paul writes this, he is writing to encourage the believers that were dealing with some difficult times, and the conditions were not really pleasant. But yet Paul says, love fulfills the law, and love is the ethical heartbeat. And that would be wise if we use that today, wouldn't it? That if we use love as the litmus test, is what I am doing as a legislator, is what I am voting for, expressing love, is that what's guiding me, or is it something else? Now, Paul is saying in so many words that love should be what guides us in Christian obedience. Not what is done to me or done or said or whatever. I am not guided or driven by that. I, as a Christ follower, am driven by love. Yes. Now, let's look at these a few word studies today. This word "owe" in verse 8, it means in the original language to be morally obligated. Yeah. To owe, it means to be morally obligated. Love is a continual debt that is never fully paid. Woo! Wow. We know when we incur debts, we desire and want and should pay our debts. Yes, I say, part of my prayer, Lord, let me pay all the people I owe. I want them paid, because if it is a debt I owe, then I need to pay it. Now, there is only one debt you can never fully repay. And y'all know what that debt is, right? That is the debt that Jesus incurred, boy, I'm about to take happy, on our behalf in going to the cross and dying for us. It is a debt that we never could repay. But Paul, yes, Lord, I feel you. It is a matter of that Jesus paid our debt when we were broken and a joke. And the joy that we have and should have now is knowing that Jesus paid our debt. Jesus went to the cross for you and for me when we couldn't afford to pay our debt. That's why Paul says, let love be the ethical heartbeat of Christian obedience. And when you know what Christ has done for you, you just ought to want to obey Him. I know obey is a bad word in many circles, but let me tell you, it's a Bible word. Don't take the word out the Bible because you don't like it or not like the context or the narrative in your current context. No. Oh, love is a continual debt that is never fully paid. Woo! We say this all the time, that put a down payment on your debt. We owe God so much, and so when we are in worship, now would be a good time to put a down payment on what you owe Him and give Him the praise that He deserves. Come on, do it right now. Come on, put some praise in that chat. You owe Him. Come on, Come on, pay on your debt now. Pay on your debt right now. There you go. Pay on your debt right now. So love is a continual debt that is never fully paid. There's another verse. There's another word in verse 8 after O, and that is love. I could spend the next 15 minutes on this one, but this word, we owe love to others without end, because that's the kind of love that God gave us. And if you're going to be a grown-up, you're going to get an opportunity to love those who've talked about you, who've lied on you, who have mistreated you, abused you, taken advantage of you. You use up all your fingers. But this is how my cousin, Kim McFarland, sings this song. They will know us by our love. And you ought to be known for your love. And so Paul here, this word agape, we use it, we throw it around. But it means self-giving, a covenantal love. This is the kind of love that is reserved. Agape love is not given to in every situation. You don't give agape love at your job. It's a covenantal love. It's really the deepest form of love. It's rooted in God's love for us. I know y'all need Bible. Come here, I got it. Romans chapter 5, verse 8. Here's what it says. You read it out loud in your room or use your headphones if you're at work or whatever. But wherever you are, just read this out loud. But God shows his love for us in that, boy, I feel like running right now. While we were still sinners, Christ died for us. Now, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, it does not get any better than that. It doesn't get any deeper than that. And Paul is reminding these people who are under this Roman rule in diverse situations, difficult scenarios. He says, love. Woo. Let me read this. Owe no one anything except to love each other. Let me raise this with you. How is your love going for those that don't always love you back? Listen, I'm so grateful that I get a chance to travel and attend, various different conferences and things of that nature. And one of the things that I heard during the prayer conference in Florida at the Recalibrate conference was that to go back home and treat those people as if nothing ever happened. He said, and I forget exactly who was saying, maybe Bishop Murphy. He was saying, go back home. You're going back home a different way. And it doesn't mean that it didn't happen, but you got to act like it never did. You know what they said. You know what they did. You know how they behaved. Yeah, but you know what? You can't let that keep you from working with it. You can't let that keep you from doing what you have to do. And this is what comes to mind here when we read this. For the one who loves another has fulfilled the law. Now, sometimes this can be challenging, loving those that just don't mean you any good. But you don't get credit for loving those who like you. You really know you are saved when you can love those who you know don't like. So, it's a decision that has to be made by the Christ follower. Yeah, you're going to get your chance. What will you do with it? Paul continues in this passage. The other word that verse 8 is fulfilled. Means to bring to full expression. Love doesn't abolish the law, but it completes its purpose. I like that. And when you understand that Paul here is not just dismissing any and everything to the point where you just you ignore what's going on around you. He's saying the way that you deal with it is by loving. He goes on. He says, we owe that to others without end. Now, he also says here, he says he gives us a due. That means love. To love each other. For the one who loves another has fulfilled the law. But then he also says there's some don'ts. And when we start looking at a little further down, he says, do not commit adultery. Do not murder. Do not steal. Do not covet. This, Paul, again, is not countering what Jesus said. And this is why I don't understand why some cherry pick about what Paul, Paul's writings don't have validity, this, that, and other. Paul here is really parroting, in a positive way, the words of Jesus Christ. Look what he says. He says, love your neighbor as yourself. It's the fulfillment of the law. He says, do not do this. He said, but do this. The way, the way Jesus would put it is in Matthew chapter 22, verse 37 through 40. Look what Jesus says. Jesus says, and he said to him, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. Paul is saying similar, if not the same thing. He says, this is the great and first commandment, and a second is like it. He said, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. On these two commandments depend all the law and the prophets. So he's saying here in verse 10, love does no wrong to a neighbor. Therefore, love is the fulfilling of the law. Now, this word, this does no harm, this phrase, it means you're not going to do evil, you're not going to do injury, moral harm. This is where you see you can't pull parts out of verses 1 through 7 and apply it to dominate rule, but then forget the part in verse 10. He says, when you love you're not going to do wrong to your neighbor. Whether they like you or whether they are part of your political party or not. That doesn't make them your enemy because they do not agree with of your political persuasion. No. So Paul says you don't do harm to your neighbor. And you don't have to... I was going to say something and I was going to be wrong. But we ought to love our neighbor. And when I love my neighbor, it's not agape love. It's just it's that philia love. It's Philadelphia. feel it. It's the brotherly love. Because you're a part of the tapestry of humanity, I'm not going to mistreat you. I am not going to sit around and plot and scheme and gossip and talk about you. One of the things that I learned from Bishop Brian Keith Hodges is his manner as it relates to other ministry and other ministers. One of the things he said that I have embraced is, I'm not going to sit around a table while other people talk about somebody else. Because I know just as soon as I get up to go to the restroom, they're going to talk about me. I'm not going to let that in my ear gate. Why? Because then it has the potential to pollute the way I interact with whoever was being talked about. And that does not have to be who they are. Social media. Be very careful how you develop opinions about people based on what somebody else is saying about them. Particularly high profile preachers and people, singers, and just be very careful that you don't weigh in when you really ought to have hush mouth. Because we don't want to do wrong to our neighbor. Galatians chapter 5, verse 14 says, for the whole law is fulfilled in one word. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. Say it with me, read it with me. For the whole law is fulfilled in one word. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. How are you treating your neighbor, friend? How are you treating your neighbor? Not just those who go to church with you, but how are you treating your coworker? How are you treating the people that you interact with? Because there is a way that we are supposed to treat one another. And I'm mighty afraid that we have forgotten Mr. Rogers. We have forgotten Mr. Rogers' neighborhood. And not that, it applies in every situation. But when you just have a genuinely healthy way to treat your neighbor, I just believe it helps with your anxiety. It helps with your stress. Paul says it earlier, do your best to live peaceably with others. And when you have the love of the Lord in your heart, that ought to be the first response. How does the Bible tell me how to treat them? James chapter 2, verse 8. If you really fulfill the royal law according to the scripture, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. You are doing well. James, he says, if you want wisdom, ask God. He'll give it to you freely. James helps us. Here he says, if you really fulfill the royal law, loving your neighbor as yourself, you're doing well. And friends, I want to encourage you to do well, do better. I was teaching in Atlanta, and I was sharing that. Do your best today. Because your best today may not have been your best yesterday, but your best today may not be your best tomorrow, but do your best today. And when you do your best to love your neighbor as yourself, the scripture says you are doing well. Let me raise these questions in your heart and mind, You can type them on the screen. Why is love described as a debt rather than a feeling? Ooh, I owe you love. Not just because I feel like loving you. Sometimes we're not lovable, are we? Hallelujah. Boy, I feel so good. I feel the love of God flooding my soul right now about how good God has been to us. And when God has been that good to you, you want to make sure that the love that God has given to you, you give to somebody else. How does love guide moral decisions better than rules alone? There's some things I'm not going to do because love won't let me. And it's not because it's a rule that says it, but love guides it, not the law. Let me throw this in for free. This term, teruma, it's an offering, and while you can study it, it's a law. Not a law, I'm sorry, it's a love. And I sow into 4 people who pour into me every week. Every week. They pour into me, I pour into them. And it's my teruma, it's a seed. It's actually 2.5% of what I take it from. So it's consistent, and it's not a law, but it's out of love. And therefore, I'm guided by that love principle, because as they sow into me, I sow back into them. Mind you now, Paul's talking about you'll be doing well when you love your neighbor as yourself. And so love guides my moral decisions. Love guides my giving decisions, as opposed to, well, it just says tithe. Yeah, I got that. But I love God so, and I love those who pour into me regularly. So I want to sow love back into them. Final question, and I'm done. In what ways can love restrain Christian freedom? Woo! Just because you're a Christian, that doesn't give you license and leeway to do any and everything, say any and everything. Because love ought to restrain your behavior. Love ought to restrain your conversation. Love ought to restrain your conduct. And when you understand that, nobody's got to legislate everything you say or everything you do. I've enjoyed myself with you today. I pray this has blessed you. Again, if it has blessed you, consider sowing that seed today, $5, $10, whatever the Lord wants you, puts on your heart to give. I promise you, you cannot beat God giving. So, until the next time, may the Lord bless you, may the Lord keep you. It indeed is my prayer. Have an amazing day.